Welcome to Office Hour. My name is Tia Gray, and I'm going to be hosting. And today's topic is going to be events and event handling. Awesome, right? Doesn't that sound pretty cool? Who doesn't want to go to an event, right? Okay, that's like my little joke. But so I'm going to share my screen, but that's the topic we're going to discuss today. And at any point, if anyone has questions, please, don't hesitate to stop me. And I'm also looking at y'all. It's just my camera setup is just side profile only. So cool. And I have my little chat box over here just to make sure. If you guys ever want these slides, just let me know. But this is just something I just made. And as you will tell, I like making slides. But anywho, so let's get started into event handling. All right, and can everyone see my screen okay? Cool, thank you. All right, so event handling. So what is an event? So if you're not familiar with events are things that happen to your HTML. So at any point when you want your user to interact with certain elements on your page, that is an event. I'll just leave it there. That is an event. So that's a div, that's a button, that's an H1, that's a header tag, whatever it may be. Those are if you want something to happen to them, we want to be able to happen. That's how we're capturing that event. So it's happening to an actual element. And they're also objects, is represented as objects, and you see that in a browser. I know Will talked about that before. And anytime that you want to manipulate the DOM, which is document object model, you don't have to get that much into it, but just understand that there are elements on your page, and if you want the user to interact with them, that is changing things on your browser. And I put a link in here for more information. The most common events are clicking an element, so a button, a div, H tag, so on and so forth, submitting a form, input change, hovering over mouse, typing, pressing keys, scrolling. There's something with blurs. There's something with loading. There's so many that a user can do, and we need to be able to capture each one of those. I highlighted the 3 that you commonly use here in this course, so you know that, hey, most of the time it's going to be these 3. You can go get into the others later on if you want to do your project. That's absolutely fine. But these are the first 3 are the ones that you're going to get into the most here in this course. So that's an event. So now when it comes to event handlers, typically they start with an on something. These are just a few of this is in vanilla JavaScript, by the way. We'll get into React in a moment. But these are just some of the ones that you probably already interacted with, whether in web fundamentals, or you probably play with some of them in the current JavaScript course, okay? So now it comes to event handling. So when it comes to interacting with the elements on the page, we want to be able to capture that, like I mentioned before. So with that being said, event handlers is how we do that. We do that. Event handlers are functions that take in other functions to execute a certain action, called a callback. These are names in jargon, so I'm gonna try to repeat it as much as often, because I know sometimes we say it, but you're just like, wait, what does that even mean? So if I repeat myself, that is why. If you get it, thank you. But if there's some other folks that like, I don't understand what she means by that, or so this is like just me really breaking it down when it comes to that there. So with that being said, okay, cool. So with that being said, so event handlers are functions. So just if you remember that, they're functions and they take on other functions, and that is called a callback. A callback is when a function takes in another function. So just trying to get used to the jargon here. If you want your user to do anything special or dynamic on the page, you want to use an event handler. So for those who are going to be entering in projects and algos in a couple months, a lot of times when we think about it, you probably want to start incorporating some JavaScript anyway, because we want to do more than just a CRUD. Okay, so it's more than just CRUD. Create, read, update, and delete. Okay. So now we're going into callbacks. So if you're unaware, and when you're coding, typically most programs read from top to bottom. So it's going to go from each line, and from each line, it's going to make sure that's executed. And that's called synchronously, okay, line by line. But sometimes we don't want our code to act that way. Sometimes we want our code to do something while something else is going on. And this is a reason why we use callbacks. Another reason that we use callbacks is that sometimes we actually want a function to execute at a certain time, right? So we sometimes want this button to execute immediately when this is done, or maybe just before a certain time interval, whatever the case may be. We will use a callback to do that. So those are reasons why we use callbacks. Callbacks can be anonymous. And I don't know about y'all, but I was just like, okay, what is anonymous function? What does that mean? I'm not gonna lie. And it just means it doesn't have a name. You'll see that syntax momentarily, but it does not have a name. And when we're going to use them, it doesn't need to have a name, because only in this context, this function is going to be executed. It's going to be ran. And again, we're going to see examples when we start coding it a bit. The similarities and differences for those who may be coming from web fundamentals and coming into JavaScript, or maybe it's been a long time. Typically, this is how we would do, I'm going to get some more code up here. This is how it would look like. We would have our on click, it would be in the parentheses, and then you call that function and you have to connect your JavaScript. This is how we would do it in vanilla JavaScript, right? But now that in React, we're losing those parentheses, quotes, excuse me, quotes. We lose the quotes, and then we're going to use curly brackets here. So this is what the naming convention stays the same, which is good. And here are, this definitely did not put out the way I wanted to, but anyhow. So these are the do's and don'ts. So the correct way to do this in JavaScript is to use the curly brackets without using the parentheses here. So on these, use my annotation. There we go. So here we don't want to use the parentheses. If we use a parentheses, as soon as the user comes on the page, it's not going to be able to work in the way that we want it to. It's going to automatically trigger that function. So with that being said, we're going to again lose the parentheses and just call it right here. And then again, for this here, for the anonymous callback, this is what the syntax is going to be. So these square brackets, including this fat arrow, represents the anonymous function. It says, hey, I'm going to take in a function. So on click is a function, right? It's an event handler, it's a function. It's going to take an anonymous function to execute this function over here. Okay, it's a lot of functions, I know, but hopefully we kind of get into the meat and matters of it all. But that's essentially it. That's all the slides that I do have with some just visual representation, get into a little bit of the coding. Does anyone have questions or concerns with any of the content that I shared thus far? Before I move into that part, did I go too fast? Hey, hold on, could you go back to here? Anything like that before I move on? Okay, so sorry. So at what point, I could always back up a little bit, and I'm sorry, I'm also a New Yorker, so sometimes I don't realize how fast I go, so please forgive me. I can always back up a little bit, and but at what point did I possibly lose, one or two folks? You guys could unmute, by the way. Hello. Okay. A lot of functions. Okay. So I want to back up just a little bit. No problem. So I'll back up just a little bit and just do a little bit of a overview, just in case. So we understand that events are things that happen to our HTML elements, right? Those elements are a div, a button, and H1. Those are elements. We want our user to do something with them, right? So it's more than, hey, I want to create something. It's more than I want to update something or delete or read something. I want my user to interact with my page, right? I want them to linger here in this little area. So that is an event. So when it comes to capturing that event, I don't want that to just, a user just do something, nothing happens. I want something to happen. When that something happens, that's your event handling, your event handlers, okay? The event handlers are functions. And that means they're going to execute a block of code. But during that time, we want to pass in another function to our event handler. So event handler is the names like this: on click, on load, on mouse over, on submit, those on change. Those are the most common ones we're going to be, well, the most common ones are on change, on submit, and on click. Those are the most common ones that especially we're going to be using in this course, right? So that's the event handler. That's that function. And then when it comes to handling that function, sometimes you want to execute another function. So say, hey, I want this to happen after my user clicks this button. So that's essentially what that is going on there. And a lot of times they're going to be anonymous callbacks. And just in quick summary, the callbacks is just something that we want to, a callback is something, a function takes in another function. We want a function to do another function. And that's really common in code. We want more, maybe two or more things to happen at a time. And we don't want to put everything in one function. We want to be able to split out our functionalities when a user interacts with our page. Hopefully I was able to kind of clear up some things, and we're going to get into a little bit of code to have a little bit more practicality with it. But hopefully I was able to slow down and be able to share that information. So how was that for everyone there? Cool, great, gotcha. Thank you guys for your honesty and transparency. All right, so we're gonna get into some things. I didn't have time to make it pretty, but eventually as I go along, because React was playing games with me. So I was like, React, stop playing with me. I'm gonna switch to next if you don't stop. So we're gonna get into some code right now. This is our app. It's absolutely beautiful, I know. But we're gonna review some things. So let's talk about, we're gonna go into our handy dandy inspect tool. So this should look familiar if you're coming from web dev. If you come from Java or Python, this is probably foreign to you because you guys have probably barely even seen this, which is all right. So, to get here, just in case, some folks, you will right click and go to inspect. Right click and go to inspect. That is how you get here. I know there's a shortcut on your computer and I forgot, but it's right click and inspect. That's how you get there. And you should already have your React tools downloaded, components and profiler. Those are your React tools. If you don't have it, you would actually just go here, React dev tools. Thanks, Chris. React developer tools. I'm using Firefox. I like them. I just like Firefox. This is what it is. But if you use Chrome, this is one for Chrome. And if you use Firefox, you just use Firefox. And then you just download it like that. Okay, guys? So mine is already downloaded. Those are typically the top two browsers. I don't really recommend Safari. Typically it's Google or Firefox. I think Microsoft Edge is all right. So yeah, so let's go here and we're going to go to the console. So whenever you're playing with JavaScript, you're going to start living in your console. This is going to be the go-to place. If anything is not working on your front end, you want to come to your front end of your console, your front end console, because you have a technically back end console, but well, terminal. But we want to come here, right? So with that being said, I just have a simple component, have app.js, I call it gray hour, just, you know, just giving a nice simple container. That's it. I'll make it pretty next time. So, so for my state, I have some few states going on. I'll get into that in a moment, but I just want to kind of first go to this handle click, right? Want to go here. So we're gonna go to this first button, click me over here, and I have a simple React button. If anyone's wondering, that's just all command or control B. I just have mine on the right because it just makes more sense to me for it to be the right, but I want to get that out of the way. So just a simple button. Remember, on click is a function. It's already a function. It's our event handler. And we're calling it here to say, hey, I want some code to interact. So this function is calling another function. It's not a callback though, but it's calling another function. Well, not anonymous function, but we'll get there. So this is a callback. So this is now calling another function, right? Called handle click. My handle click is right here, and I'm just doing something simple. I'm just doing some console logging, nothing special. Again, we're taking it, slowly here. So we're gonna come here, and if I click, I'm gonna bring this up here because if I click this here, it says click me, right? I have three things consoling. In this console, I'm consoling my whole E object. So the event is the E. Sometimes I call it E, sometimes I call it event, sometimes I call it EVNT, something like that. Whatever you call it, just letting you know that that's what it represents. And this is my object. I know it's an object because A says object, that's for one thing, but also too, you see these curly brackets over here. It's telling me, hey, this is an object. And these are all the properties that it has, okay? All the properties that it has. Most of the time, especially in this course, 99% of the time, you're always gonna do target. It has a property of this over here, okay? All the time. So if you're unsure, it's always gonna be eTarget.something, okay? If you forget. Because we're not gonna use all this we're not gonna use all this stuff here. If you ever really want to really dive in documentation, please do so. But you're not gonna use this stuff. So I'm not gonna go into that. But this is my object, and then it has a key, a property called target. And so this is the first thing I'm consoling. And then the second thing I'm consoling is the target right now, right? So like, what the heck is this target? You're gonna be hearing that all the time. And sometimes it can get really, really confusing. So what I did, I made some notes over here. So E is the event, which is the user interacting with the page, typing, right? Or clicking, something like that. Change, which is a different one, but in this case, it's actually the submit button, which is the target. And what that really means is that the target is the element that triggered the event. So in this case, if the target is the element that triggered it, well, this button triggered it. When I click this button, I wanted a console log to happen, right? So remember, the E is an object. It has several properties. You're 99% of the time in this course going to be using E.target. The target is what triggered the event. Okay, it's what triggered it. Hey, when a user clicked on this button, that is what triggered it. And then I just console log .enter text because if you ever looked in here, this is the target part. It has all these other stuff, and you probably would use some of this stuff. So I just literally chose something random, but you can use any of this stuff in here to interact with your browser page. So I just, type something I looked for something enter text. A lot of this stuff is no, obviously you're not be using this, but this is this whole big object thing. And in here, it has even outer text, but you know, but here's all the stuff that it has. And I decided, hey, I want to be able to console log the inner text of it. So if anytime in your code, you're trying to see the eTarget.name, eTarget.value, eTarget.whatever, you can just console log it out to see if you're really grabbing it correctly. So that's a little tip, a pro tip there. Before I go into some more, that's just one click. Does anyone have questions on that, on that part or what I've discussed so far? So, ones and zeros in the chat, this makes sense. Questions, I got to get some type of feedback from some of y'all folks to see if I'm talking too fast. All right, cool. All right. So let's go to the next one. Some of your functions, when you want your function to take in a parameter, or I'm sorry, taking an argument, so if anyone forgot, which is okay, I always have to think PA. If you ever from PA, this is how I remember PA. That's assistant state from me. So I remember PA, parameter, and any which is defined as the definition of the function. So when you're defining a function, you want to pass in a parameter, P. When you're executing the function, you want to be able to right there. When you're executing a function, you want to be able to pass it an argument, which is here. To always think PA. Hey, I'm going to pass it something. Sometimes you can pass multiple arguments at a time, but for right now, so won't lose anyone, I'm just focusing on just one. So on this button over here, I just want to take in a parameter. I mean, taking a parameter, but I'm taking an argument to be more specific, called name. And obviously this is not dynamic. This is not like, oh man, but I'm just showing you all that, you know, different syntaxes that you'll use here in the course. So for right now, this on-click is set up a little differently. You have these empty empty parentheses, and you have this fat arrow, and then you have the name of your function, and then you pass in something. It's a lot going on here. So remember, I'm being redundant for a reason. On-click is a function. It is your event handler. It could be on click, on submit, on change, on something. It has, if you see it on, it is an event handler. This event handler is taking in a function. We call this function click handle click to. I know, very original. I know. But it's taking another function. So that's a callback, right? What makes that anonymous is actually really this over here. So I'm saying, hey, I'm going to be passing in this information called Ozzy. I just made up the name, don't I know. But I'm just passing in some information. So look what happens when a user clicks me for a name. It says Shalom Ozzy. Shalom means just, you know, peace be to you. So I have to change the name. I want to say hi, but I like to say Shalom too. But anywho, so that being said, I just want to console log this name. So it took in whatever I put in here, right? It took that in and it put it in my function to console log. And that's what that will look like if you are trying to take in an argument, and you're going to be doing that as well. When you try to view something, update something, or delete something, you're going to be taking a parameter. You're going to be taking in an argument, right? Because in order to update something in your controllers, eventually get there, updating something in your backend, you want to be able to pass your function in ID. And typically that's what it's going to be. So this is what I'm just showing you there. Does that make sense for everyone? Cool. Now it's 23 y'all and only 6 y'all said something. So could the rest of y'all let me know if I lose anyone, this is good. You want me to slow down? Hey, could you, say this again? Please let me know. Cool. All right, so now we're going to the next one. So the handle input change. So over here. So again, if anyone could remind me, what is, in this case, what is my event handler? This is my next function. What is my event handler? Very good, Kat. The on change. Very good. The on change is the event. Sorry, is the event handler. It's a function. So for here, I'm doing just something, again, this is not pretty, but I'm just doing something regular, just, so my on change is my function, has an on it, and it's taking in a function called handle input change. Typically, when you are working with forms, you're gonna have have a naming convention, something like this, right? And I'm just sharing with you how you can like use something like placeholder to actually have the name. So I'm going to take you through some state stuff. If you guys were kind of hazy on state, I'm going to do a brief reminder. So state is here where you want to have, if you want to have some information for more than a hot second, right? So in this case, name, set name. This name over here is my variable. It's kind of like saying, this is the same of it, right? This is saying name equals, this is like saying const name equals a string of gray. That's literally what this says. Kid you not. This is what it means over here. Const name, hey, it's gonna equal gray. Now, the next part of it here, because now we have turned this into something immutable. So like, I can't just change it like that. You can't just change it where I want name to equal now, cat. I can't just do that, right? I can't just say, if I want to change it in here, but if I want to change it within my function, I can't just rename it like that. In vanilla JavaScript, you could do that, but in React, you can't. So we have a function that goes along with it. This function allows me to change the name. And you're going to see a little bit of that there. So this is a variable. This is a function to change that variable. What's the annotation? So here, this is what it represents, gray, right? This function changes that, okay? I always like to repeat it because sometimes, correct, the getter and setter thing. Yes, correct. The getter and setter. This is the variable. This is a function that changes this variable. So now with that being said, we can clear that off here. So now we're going to move down to the handle input change. So in this case, actually, this is actually for that one, but anywho, well, for this one, I'm gonna just actually I got my function mixed up, so I do apologize. For this handle change, I'm going to now put in a different name called event. And again, this could be event, just make sure it just makes sense. So right now I'm just console logging the event, but as you see here, I want to just see if what my user is doing. And I want my user, whatever they're typing, to kind of to equal that there. So I'm actually going to console log target as my computer starts to, there we go. Target dot value. Sorry, I got a little lost there. Okay, there we go. Oh, sorry, I see I bought event.target.io. So remember, it's the event. So I'm here again. So right now, this is my state. I just have it as gray. So I'm just leaving that there. So that one, well, that being said, I'm gonna just pick literally one person's name. I'm gonna pick John. John. So as I'm updating it, my function is going off. It's logging every type of change in there. So I'm printing out my events, boom, J. Printing out another event, boom, JA. Printing out another event, JAN. And then until it gets to the end. And it's console logging that every single time. And mind you, you can even reassign this variable, reassign this eTarget.value to a variable called user value. How I did it right here. And it's just as simple. You will be using something like this. And we'll be showing you that later on. But and then here, this is how I'm changing the name. So originally I set my state to gray, but I want to change that state. So that's not going to be gray anymore. It's actually going to be, I'm going to change my name to whatever my user puts in, my user value. Okay, that's what I'm doing. All right. Does that make sense? When it comes to targeting what the user inputs, this is specifically for on change, right? This is specifically for on change. So does anyone have questions on that there? Grabbing that value from our event.target, right? And reassigning it to our state using the state function. Does anyone have questions on that there? Any type of like holes or like, oh, wait, could you do that again? Can you show the, yeah, sure, no problem, Luis. So yeah, so the on change is right here. This is the on change. And for right now, I just have a placeholder, something typically that you would use here. And again, the on change is our event handler. It's taking in another function, a callback. And it's activating the function from above to track every change that the user inputs. So when it comes to here, dropping it down, that's my events. It's coming to our target. It goes to one of our last properties here in the target one called value. So here it is. I don't know why it looked empty now. Actually, no, well, it started off empty, duh. But so if you come here, it's gonna log all that there. Scroll all the way down. Again, this stuff you don't know, you don't have to know, you don't have to look into this, and everything like that. I'm not sure. There we go. I just needed to expand it. So it tells you to type. It tells you a lot of the things that you're going to be doing here. Okay. So I'm going to refresh this back. So the last thing, no problem. So the last one is the form. So Will's going to go more into like form submissions later on today, but a little bit of what he talked about yesterday. So in your form, this is not a pretty form. This is not even in a form. Oh yeah, it is in a form tag, but it's not a pretty form. But this is what Will was kind of talking about yesterday. So in this case, what is our handler? In this case, what is our handler for this last function over here? For this last one here, what is our handler? Correct, Kelsey. Our on submit. Our on submit is the event handler. Redundancy again. Event handlers start with an on something. They're going to take in another function. Could you do another function in here without naming it? Yes, you can. But typically speaking, because for on submit, you're going to be doing a lot of code. You don't want that huge chunk of code here. It's not readable. So it's going to take in another function. In this case, this on submit is going to submit our information. We're not there to, hook up a backend, but you're going to send that information to our backend. So in this case, we're just using some state to store some stuff. Woo. But when you are using forms, you want to use actually two event handlers. You want something to submit the data, but the thing is you also need to capture that data as well. So with that being said, we have to use still an on submit to submit it and an on change to track the data, whatever the user's inputting into that form. Does that make sense, everyone? Cool. So that being said, so for here, we would want to have an on change and an on submit functions, and that is normal. So have my handle submit here is doing something regular again, and I also have my on change form. I actually really didn't finish this one. I just forgot. I just realized that too. But anywho, for the on change for right now, it's actually come back here. So for my full name, same thing that was happening before. I'm just console logging it. But here, I'm gonna just type in, you know, J Gray, whatever. Let's see. That's my console. Oh, wait, why isn't it? Sorry. Oh, because I set it up differently, that's why. I set this one up a little differently. I forgot about that one there. But if I try to submit this over here, J Gray has registered. So I definitely skipped a whole step. I didn't finish it off yet. This is definitely wrong. I probably spelled it. Look at me. And success message. All right, cool. Anywho, so with that being said, for here, Will again is going to go more in depth with it, but that's kind of like where he left off with. When you're going to use a form, you're going to use two event handlers, an on submit to actually submit the data, but an on change to actually track that data. And I would actually have my information here. Again, right now I'm just console logging. It's not working because I did not put it in here. I actually decided to do something different because I was trying to figure out something else, but essentially, if I wanted to do that, I was comment this one back in. This one is more robust, but it takes a little bit more handling with it if you don't know how to use state correctly. But as you can see, I'm logging in some stuff, but as you also see, it's not logging it in. So you have to do a different syntax. I'm not going to get into that right now because that'll be a little bit too advanced for what we're doing right now. But this is when you want more dynamic. Again, we'll show you that for the future. But then this here is setting the state as well, but doing it. And I know it's setting state here because if I go here in my components, put a button and sorry, trying to move this over. There we go. Where's my states? What is my state? Sorry. This is where my state would be if I can find it. Did I lose my state? Oh man, I'm not setting state. I have to get back to you guys on that one. But
check your hooks, maybe. Isn't that where it says hooks?
Not the hook. I don't think it's a hooks. That's the context stuff. It should really be here. So I probably didn't. Yeah, my state is set up. State here, but it will actually come up if I submit it here. So I know it's holding on to it. I just don't know where I put it. I have to like go back. Ah, there we go. Found it. Gray hour. Okay. I found it. So here, that's undefined for right now, but this is my name for state that it stays there. And this is also for state. Again, I skipped a step. This is not how you would do it, but I just really wanted to show like the event handling, taking in functions, the types of functions that you're going to be using for the course to kind of like share that, kind of go a little bit more over state, like use state and so on and so forth. That's primarily this extra office hour was. Does anyone have questions on that there? The reason why this is registered is because I have success message. I created state to say, you know, success message. We wouldn't do this in a real life application necessarily. Maybe upon like registering a user, but I said whatever the user submits here, I want to set whatever that value. So I know it was being set. I just didn't track it properly in my handle change input. A separate function. And then I said, hey, whatever the full name is, I want to just set that message here. And I just reference my state here with success message. So that's how that appeared on there without, so here I have to type as I type, but the difference between here, as I type something, it's immediately happening, right? That's my on change. But if I want to submit something, you see nothing's coming up on the screen, but if I press submit, now, you know, Sag is registered. So the difference between the two, this will be more reminiscent of what you do in a real life application, but this is showing you actually what the on change is doing. Cool. That is about it. I know about 10 more minutes until office hours done, but I do want to leave questions or concerns, anything that like, hey, you wanted me to cover a little bit more in depth, or maybe I spoke too fast again and you want me to slow down. But you know, please let me know. So I can answer those questions. But I think that's about it, guys. Everyone. Will this code be available for everyone to review? Sure, if you guys want to. I can do that. I can add it to the repo. Do you mean like Tiffany, do you mean like the PowerPoint and the code, or just the code? Both? Yeah, I can make it available. I like making PowerPoints, as you can tell. But yeah, I can do that. Sure. All right. Now there's some folks that did not say anything at all. Did you all have questions, concerns? Did this material make sense? Did it clear up any questions that you may have? Did it fill any holes? Any dying questions? Anything like that? Cool. All right, so definitely solidified some concepts for me. Great, I'm glad to hear that. This is kind of something that if you don't go into extra reading for yourself, it's not like super mentioned in the learning platform. Like I had to go look up some stuff, like, you know, what is an event and so on and so forth. So it's mentioned lightly on the platform, but the platform definitely encourages like, hey, you know, do some more reading. So if you're not familiar with this, or you know, this is just a way to kind of me bridge that gap for those, especially with a whole bunch of jargon, like event handlers, like what is that there? You know, events, what's that? So I'm glad that helped. And this will be good for those who come from Python and Java, where they typically don't interact too much on the front end anyway. And this will be good when you're going into projects and angles, we're like, hey, I actually want my user to do some stuff or stay on this page a little longer. Let me incorporate some JavaScript. So you could do React with it, but if you just want to do regular vanilla JavaScript, this will also be helpful as well. As I continue to work with students for like Java and Python for their, you know, solo projects. So JavaScript stack definitely has a leg up when it comes to this stuff. But if no one has any questions or concerns, I can stop talking. But you guys have been a good crowd. I appreciate you all. Cool. All right. I'm gonna stop recording.
Thanks, Gray.